Spitting's a dirty habit.
I know a worse one.
Hi there, and welcome to Baseball by Design. I am SportsLogos.net minor league baseball correspondent Paul Caputo, broadcasting live, as always, from the Sunday Helmet Hall of Fame in my basement in Fort Collins, Colorado. Today, we're going to be talking about the collegiate summer level Traverse City Pit Spitters, who play in Traverse City, Michigan. Later on in this episode, I'm going to be speaking with designer Jason Klein of the prolific design firm Brandiose. I'll be speaking with Kat Pei, who is the executive director of the National Cherry Festival. And of course, Dan Simon will be here with one of his Studio Simon Stumper trivia questions. Right now, I am so pleased to have Jacqueline Holm, who is the general manager for the Traverse City Pit Spitters on Baseball by Design. Jacqueline, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. Doing great. And yourself?
I am doing very well. So excited to be talking about this really fun baseball brand, the Traverse City Pit Spitters. Why is a team in Traverse City, Michigan called the Pit Spitters? Why do you guys have this cherry-based logo? What is going on in Traverse City with cherries?
Great question. So have you been to Traverse City? I'll start there.
I never have. The closest I've been, I think, is probably Grand Rapids.
Oh, also a great community. So a little bit about Traverse City. So we're located in northern Michigan. So I'm a native Texan. As you can see, I'm wearing my Texans jersey today, but everybody who's from Michigan always tells you to use your hand as kind of a map. So we're way up here in the top.
On the pinky.
Yeah, the pinky, exactly. So Traverse City is an amazing, vibrant community that a lot of tourists come visit. We are right on Lake Michigan. So East and West Bay is very beautiful. We have a lot of wineries on the lake because we are the #1 domestic producer of tart cherries in the United States. So not necessarily winemaking cherries. These tart cherries are typically for like more juices or like medicinal purposes, vitamins, things like that. But another unique characteristic about Traverse City is that it is the same latitude as Bordeaux, France, and Sonoma Valley, California. So it's a very good climate for growing cherries and fruits of the sort. So we have great wine culture here, lots of cherry wine, cherry pie. So there's a lot of great things that celebrate the cherry here in Traverse City.
This cherry culture, before I saw this brand, and this brand is I guess now 6 years old, getting used to the fact that it's 2025. The team came into existence in 2019. I did not know this about Traverse City, Michigan, that it was the tart, and it wasn't until right now that I knew that it was the tart cherry capital of the world. I thought it was just the cherry capital of the world. So, I'm adjusting my knowledge base here. How does that manifest itself? Are there, festivals? Are there, people wearing cherry hats like the cheese hats they wear in Green Bay? Are they wearing cherry hats in Traverse City? What happens with cherries in Traverse City?
The cherry is very celebrated here in Traverse City. So a couple of things. I think they're celebrating their 100th year anniversary here in 2026, but the festival foundation puts on the Cherry Festival every year. So for a week in usually the end of June, beginning of July. So it'll be right over Independence Day typically. I mean, and it is all out one celebration of cherries, but also all things Americana. So like the Blue Angels come out. There's a concert series that's goes along with it. So like this year they've announced Tyler Hubbard, but they've seen the likes of Chicago came last year. T.I. Nelly has come in the past. So there's been it's a very small scale, what I say, a Houston rodeo. So it's got the carnival attached to it, all the fried cherry foods you can handle, and then the concert series, which is great. So, and then of course celebrates all things cherry. So there's a pit spitting contest, there's a pie eating contest, they crown a cherry queen every year, and they're usually quite decorated. They come here to our stadium and throw out a first pitch for some game during the year. So the cherries are quite celebrated here. And then, of course, I especially love to wear cherries on my clothing. Anytime I can wear Pit Spitters gear, spit and water, what we call the two cherries that are spitting in our logo. So anytime we can wear that out in the community, it's embraced, of course.
The two characters in the logos have names. Spit and Wad. Okay. Spit and
Very
Wad.
clever. Again, that was before my time. It preceded my time also.
So the logo, these characters, Spit and Wad, which is a little gross, but kind of fun, right? Like Spit and Wad. They're not just cherries. You're not just celebrating cherries, right? But they're actually in the act of spitting. Do you have activities at the ball games? Are there things that you do with pit spitting? Is it encouraged? Do you sell cherries at the ball? I have so many questions about spitting pits at the ball game? Are there activities, all that sort of thing?
We have cherry themed foods, but as far as encouraging fans to spit, whether it's pits or anything else, we don't have any activities of the sort. But I would encourage it, I think, if it the opportunity presented itself.
What about just like, do you sell like a bag of cherries? Can I, if I come to a pit spitters game, can I buy like a bag of cherries and sit in the first row and then just like launch cherry pits out onto the field?
Pits, yeah. No, we don't have that currently. So we're kind of working on a soft idea right now, the brainchild of our promotions team, where we add a cherry to anything. So if you come up and you get a beer, you get nachos, you get a hot dog, hey, you want to put a cherry on that? You want to add cherries to that? And you press a button and boom, you can get some cherries on whatever you order.
I think that's actually kind of brilliant, right? Like if I come up, I'm gonna get like a bratwurst, an ice cream helmet. I think you guys, you do have the ice cream helmets, right? The little plastic
Oh, yeah.
helmets.
And we
Yeah,
have
yeah.
fried cherry pie ice cream too.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So yeah, and you can get cherries and all of that. But yeah, like putting a cherry on something savory, putting a cherry in your beer, what a way to like accentuate that experience there. I was just thinking that like spitting is kind of a storied part of the baseball tradition, right? Like you picture these, especially like old school when I was growing up with it, right? Like like these players in the 80s who would be scratching themselves and spitting out tobacco juice and that sort of thing. So this is like
Of
a little more
course.
hygienic version of that, I think. So so Spit and What, are there actually, like costumed characters, Spit and What? Are they running around at the ballpark?
No, our mascot is also an ode to cherries. So
Okay.
his name is Monty,
Okay.
and that comes from the Montmorency cherry. And so it's shortened that, and because he is an orchard creature. So he was actually born out of a cherry orchard. So that is our ode to from our mascot, our ode to cherries.
Well, so speaking of orchards, there are a handful of different logos. The first one that we've talked about, obviously, the two cherries. There's one that is a baseball glove with cherries in it that looks like that mitten that you were talking about, the with the shape of Michigan, and then the leaves are the Upper Peninsula there. And then you've got a tree character who is also spitting out a baseball like a pit. Is there one that is a sort of fan favorite? Is there one that you see sort of around the ballpark the most?
The staff has their favorite, so we're big fans of the Michigan
Hmm.
logo because just the cleverness of it being a baseball mitt and the leaves turning into the Upper Peninsula. So we're a big fan of that one. Thankfully, the colors and the structure of the logos lend themselves really well to our apparel, our team apparel, whether it's front office or fan facing. So we get a lot of success there. Our primary logo with just the two cherries is probably the most distinct and most recognizable, but most people recognize us from just the cherries.
When you wear Pit Speeders gear outside of the community or Michigan at large, especially, if you're in, I'm just picturing Houston because you mentioned that's where you're from. What questions do you get? What reactions do you get to that gear?
People love the overall look of the logo. I mean, it's fierce, it's engaged. Obviously, the two cherries spitting is really cool. And we have it's a very magical place here in Michigan. So being from the Houston area, I never realized growing up how many people visited Michigan from
Hmm.
Texas. So every time I go back home, I get to talk to people about Traverse City and oh, their visits to Grand Rapids, or oh, they went there as a kid, or this or that. So there's a lot of connections actually in the South to Michigan. So whenever I wear my mitt with my Upper Peninsula leaves and all that stuff, I always get stopped and people ask me questions about, hey, are you from Michigan and are you a Michigan fan? This and that, and then I get to tell them about our team here.
This team, the Traverse City team, obviously was called the Beach Bums before they were the Pit Spitters, and they had a fun bear themed logo with a bear throwing a baseball. Beach Bums, obviously a reference to the fact that you're near the Great Lakes there. What inspired that name change, and how was that received in the community there?
So in 2018, and yes, you're right, we have fabulous beaches. I will just shamelessly plug, like if you haven't been to Traverse City and you like the beach, fresh water, gorgeous shorelines, like come on out. We'd love to have you. On that note, yes, Beach Bums was a very much beloved name that belonged to the previous ownership group. Warfel Park was the previous name of the park. In 2018, the West Michigan Whitecaps, who own and operate the Pit Spitters, decided to put out a bid for, hey, let's find some local ownership that would be willing to partner with us on purchasing the club when it went up for sale in 2018. So typically in that situation, when you're transferring ownership groups, it is a good time to kind of evaluate like, hey, what does my front office look like? What kind of facility needs do I have? And how's my branding? So at that time, we elected to bring in Brandiose, which is a very highly coveted, great reputation brand in the industry who has done this for a long, long time, to help us come up with that new kind of phase of what the beach bums were going to be. So when the team transferred ownership and experienced its inaugural season in 2019, we hosted a naming rights contest at the end of 2018. And there were some really interesting submissions, and the top five actually have them here. Were the tree shakers, which is where that tree logo comes from, to kind of pay homage to that. The dogmen, which if you haven't heard of the local kind of boogeyman story, that's the dogman. So I would encourage you to look it up on Wikipedia and see what you
Oh,
can find. It's pretty interesting.
like
But yeah,
like the New
kind of
Jersey Devil of Michigan?
exactly, yes. So there's a lot of history behind that. The Sasquatches, the Black Pearls, and then ultimately the Dune Bears is really what it came down to, the Dune Bears and the Pit Spitters.
Hmm.
So considering what we could come up with the spitting cherries and the awesome Michigan logo, we elected to, and by fan vote, went with the Pit Spitters logo.
Well, Jason Klein of Brandiose is a regular guest on this podcast. He'll be the next segment on this episode. So when you and I are done talking here, we'll go talk to Jason about the work that they did on this brand.
Awesome.
I can't have you on without asking. I know we're focusing primarily on the pit spitters here, but I have to ask you about the cork dorks.
Oh,
This
sure.
is this is a the Up North Cork Dorks is an alternate brand that the team has, and it's an homage to the wine industry in Michigan, which I think is news to some people. But you all created an alternate identity sort of based on that wine industry with a kind of nerdy, dorky cork character with a purple tongue hanging out and a little beanie propeller cap. So it's real fun, real whimsical, very minor league baseball. The Up North Cork Dorks. Why up north? And what if in your own words, what's a cork dork?
Yeah, this was born out of, as you mentioned, so another kind of hidden gem and asset to the Traverse City community is because of that farming and agriculture background. There's a lot of wineries in the area. So right on Lake Michigan here, within about 40 minutes of Traverse City, we have 40 or more wineries. I think we're at 47 now. So pretty awesome that, if you come here, one of the things you'll see is, hey, wine tours. So kind of as an homage to that, we tried to figure out it actually was born out of a partnership with a local winery here. And then also just kind of the brainchild of some of the marketing and promotions that we do back here. I think some of the most fun parts of working in the minor league industry is these wild and wacky ideas. Nobody really ever tells you that's terrible. It's just kind of like the next person springboards off of what you're saying to make it a little crazier, take it to the next level. And that's the kind of energy we like to facilitate here. So as this was being put together, the partnership with the winery, the timing was good. They said, hey, we love it. We want to add up north just so we make it our own and make sure that people know it's not just northern Michigan. It's, hey, we're up in Traverse City. We want to recognize that and pay homage to that. So it actually was born out of a couple of things and just being in the right place at the right time. But yeah, I would say a cork dork, if you can imagine it. He has braces, he has glasses, he's a little bit clownish, but that's what makes it so much fun.
I appreciate your ability to track my like 9-part questions. It's like I realize I'm asking like 4 questions at a time here, and then you just line them up and knock them down. So I appreciate that. The dork part of that, is there a dorkery around wine there? Like, is there sort of a nerd culture about wine?
There's definitely pride. And
Mm,
so I think that's what we wanted to recognize too. Hey, you call people maybe who enjoy wine, sometimes they get the connotation that they're wine snobs,
uh-huh.
have, high class taste or whatever, this or that. But we wanted to make this accessible for everybody. So
Hmm.
feeling like, hey, if you've tried wine or like wine or want to experience wine at the ballpark, it's available for you. So when you talk about dorkiness, I would say, yeah, there's essentially a culture of people here who are advocating to bring tourism and visitors here because of what's been created through our agriculture or agritourism. So we're very proud of that. So it was cool to be able to develop this logo and share it with everybody in our community because we appreciate it too.
Do you do anything particular to wine at those games when you play as the Cork Dorks? Do the wineries bring their wines in, or do you sell wine at the ballpark?
Yes, we've paired it with a ladies' night typically. So there's like usually for ladies, we do like a charcuterie board slash wine tasting pairing, and
Okay.
then do a grape stomping contest. So yeah, we kind of build it out to have a little bit of fun with it. And then we also the jerseys that are worn that night, those are made custom and special for just that game, and then they're auctioned off for charity at the end of the game.
So if I come to a game, I can have my cherry pie in a ice cream helmet and then
Yeah,
wash it down with some wine, on Cork
that's
Dorks
right.
nights.
Local Cork Dorks wine. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, Jacqueline, thank you so much. This has really been a lot of fun. Where can people find you on social media? Where can people find the team online, that sort of thing?
So pitspitters.com is the easiest way to find us. We just received our 2025 schedule. So of course, because we're on web, we're also on social. So you can find us on X and Facebook and LinkedIn and all that great stuff. I'm Jacqueline Holmes, so you can find me on LinkedIn there. If you want to connect and are looking for more information about the Pit Spitters, we'd be happy to share it with you on any platform.
Awesome. Jacqueline, thank you so much. This has been fun. Best of luck with the rest of the off season and good luck in 2025.
Thank you so much.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I am so very pleased to have my good friend Jason Klein from the prolific design firm Brandiose, San Diego-based Brandiose, and I say that now because it's snowing in Colorado, and I wish I were in San Diego. Jason, how you doing?
It's so hot here. It is
I don't need
so
that.
hot. I gotta my I no, I am literally in shorts and flip-flops as we're talking.
I am wearing a hoodie. It was actively snowing on me when I ran this morning, so it's.
Oof.
Hey, on this episode, we are talking about the Traverse City Pit Spitters.
Yes,
And hey, just recently we were talking about this is a whole Michigan theme here, I guess, because we were just talking about West Michigan on a recent episode.
that's right.
And now we're talking about Traverse City, which is the logo for Traverse City. We'll get into why they're called what they're called, but you've got a couple of cherries who are spitting out little baseballs like
Yep,
cherry pits.
that's right.
So let's get into this. What is going on in Traverse City that we've got
I mean, it's
cherries
the cherry
spitting
capital of
baseballs?
America.
Oh boy, this isn't going to be like last time when we talked about the beer capital. Is it actually the
No, this is actually the cherry capital, I believe.
All right, the cherry
Yes, it
capital.
was. There, yeah, and this project moved real fast, and it
Okay.
was uh yeah, real fast. Like the pit spitters, like that was, well, what kind of pit are you spitting? Cherries. Oh. And yeah, it was fun. Got to work with two reds we hadn't done in a while.
Uh-huh.
That was fun to sort of like this sort of red maroon combination and then this awesome green. And it was super fun. One of my favorite, secondary logos is this Michigan emblem
Yeah.
where it is a glove in the shape of Michigan, that's holding the cherries, but then oh gosh, the Upper Peninsula,
The Upper
UP.
Peninsula, the
Yep.
UP. Yep.
UP. The UP is made up of cherry tree leaves, and
I'm
yeah, that was a fun one. That was a great sleeve patch. Super fun.
I'm sure we're not breaking any news here, but everyone who knows the geography of Michigan knows that they talk about it by putting
The
two mittens
UP.
together.
That's
So
right.
you got the Upper Peninsula, which by the way is in a different time zone. I learned that recently. That
Get
the
out.
Yeah. It's basically Wisconsin. It's in the central time zone when
Wow. Hey,
the rest.
don't say it's basically Wisconsin. You come on.
I know someone who told me recently she lives in the Upper Peninsula, and she says, "Oh yeah, I'm about an hour and a half north of Green Bay," and I'm like, "You live in Wisconsin," and turns out she doesn't. There are you mentioned this. There are a series of alternate logos here. The baseball glove as Michigan with the
Yep.
leaves forming the Upper Peninsula. That's a great one. Easily recognizable to anyone who ever talks about geography in Michigan. I'm curious where the decision came to have two similar characters in the same logo, because very often a character-based logo is going to really focus on one character.
Yeah.
You've got two cherries, both of them spitting baseball pits in
Yeah.
opposite directions. How come it was
I have no
where? How did
idea.
you land? You have
I
no
have no
idea. All right,
idea.
we'll
I
we'll
have no idea.
scratch.
Yes,
We'll
Paul, I'll be
scratch that.
straight with you. I have no idea. That's okay. You can keep this. I mean, is it because it was like, there's multiple spitters, like multiple pit spitters. So
Right.
they are yes. And I think there was probably at some point we were thinking like, oh, let's do like actual pits, but then it was like, no. Let's put some baseballs in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it makes sense, and it takes out the sort of like cannibalism there. If they're spitting baseballs rather than cherry pits, then they haven't
Yes.
eaten a cherry.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I'll tell you when I asked the question, the reason I thought of it is because when I picture people spitting cherry pits, I picture like a picnic in the summertime and it's like
Hmm.
turned into this massive battle where there's like, it's a whole family and they're all spitting cherry pits at one another. And, you never have, there's
That
never
sounds
just,
disgusting, but
yeah, there's never just the lone spitter though, right? Like
yes, that's right. That's right. There's never just the lone spitter.
one of the other characters who I really like, one of the other alternate sort of ancillary logos here is the tree. And
Yeah,
it's a
right.
whole tree. It looks like a character from Lord of the Rings or something, right? Like
Ooh,
he's,
ooh,
yeah, he's like
yeah.
got this sort of regal feeling about him here. And he
Yes.
is also spitting out a baseball. Obviously derives from, the fact that that's where cherries grow. Is there anything additional about that tree that we
I
should
mean, I
know?
think that might have been a concept sketch, if
Oh,
I may, from the Tree Shakers,
oh,
that wound up like kind of just bumming a ride on the identity
right.
as an alternate logo.
Okay.
So yeah, that wouldn't surprise me.
All right. This brand, I guess it's 2025 now. So this was roughly 6 years ago that this
That's
brand
right.
came out. I'm always interested in, when there's a high-end firm like Brandiose that is working on a brand, creating a brand for a collegiate summer level team, for a Northwoods League team like this. I mean, you all work at all levels of baseball. Is it a different approach for a collegiate summer level team as compared to, when you're working on a AAA team or something?
Yes, I would argue that there's much more creativity because there is a perceived lack of risk.
Mm.
The higher you sort of move up, it's like, oh my gosh, and by the way, it's all in people's imaginations. Like
Uh-huh.
it's not real,
Yeah.
right? So like if you said, well, how would you treat a single A team different from like a major league team? Oh man, like I think the pitch spitters would be an awesome. Like
Yeah.
we have like literally like the Red Sox, right? Like the purple pants, the Red Sox, right? Like
Mhm.
so, the idea of like what's respectable and what's
Yeah.
not, like the mud hens, right? Triple A mud hens.
Yeah.
It's a female chicken in a swamp, right? Like
A fat little
it's
game bird.
yeah, that's right. Like, come on. Like, what are we doing here? So no, we don't treat it any differently. From our perspective, I think what you find is that, it's funny. I think double A teams are actually probably, I would bet double A teams are the most financially successful when it comes to
Hmm.
brands. And I think that is because there's a sort of merging, if you will, of well, it's not Major League Baseball,
Hmm.
so like we can be a little sillier,
Hmm.
right? But we're not, we're not college wood bat. Like we got
Hmm.
to like push this thing. We got to
Hmm.
like we're the town's team. We got to like, you know, star players coming in on rehab. Like it's so I think it wouldn't surprise me if it was, in terms of like, you know, definitely less creative with exceptions. I know
Yeah.
I see you out there. With exceptions, I'd say it's more conservative the way you go up, more more outrageous when you get at the bottom.
Hmm.
And I just think it's about perceived risk rather than any crazy risk, because you have, the Mud Hens top merchandising team. You have the Iron Pigs.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have a pig,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Top merchandising team in
Sure.
AAA.
Yeah.
And then you would have, yeah, Flying Squirrels, Iron Pigs, Jumbo Shrimp,
Yeah.
um,
The Chihuahuas. I was just listening to an episode
Chihuahuas. What
of.
am I thinking?
Yeah.
Chihuahuas, of course. Yes, there you go.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
So there's AAA clubs and those AAA clubs who didn't see it as a risk, but saw it as an asset.
Hmm. Hmm.
Those clubs are like retail is just they're just moving merchandise. They're just retail powerhouses, and so they become, people are like, oh, why do you focus so much on retail? And I think I've said this before, is that retail is people signing up, paying to be walking billboards, right? It's like you can go to a game
Yep.
and be like, I got a free ticket. I'm not really a baseball fan. But if you
Right.
buy and wear merchandise, you're
Right.
you are advocating for that team. And so you look at Jacksonville, the Jumbo Shrimp, you look at the Chihuahuas, you look at the Iron Pigs. these AAA clubs who are, big talked about clubs, and now they have, big audiences, and then they have, buzzworthy brands. They're going to sell more merchandise, and they're going to be therefore promoted. People are going to pay to promote them. Where if a name is more conservative, they're going to be less likely to pay to promote that team.
Sure.
And so therefore, these teams get talked about more and more and more, and it's just, a cycle.
Yeah. One of the ones I always talk about first in this conversation is one of the AA teams that Brandiose is responsible for, which is the Hartford Yard Goats.
Yeah.
It's absolutely. And you see, I mean, hey, the Binghamton Rumble Ponies were an answer on Jeopardy the other night. I mean, this is it's obviously the AA. I think you're onto something with AA. For me, as a level of baseball, I find AA the most enjoyable. I love going from the ballpark to the branding to the proximity to the level of ball. Like, I love a AA baseball game. So
Agreed.
Jason, we could talk about this all day, but I know that you're very busy. The off season is the busiest time of year for you guys. I know that that's true. So I appreciate all the time that you take to chat with me. As always, find the work that Brandiose does on brandiose.com and at Brandiose on all the socials. Jason, thank you. We'll talk to you next time.
See you there.
All right, everyone, welcome back. I'm so pleased to have on the podcast Kat Pay, who is the executive director for the National Cherry Festival in Michigan, where cherries reign supreme, it seems. Kat, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning. Good. How are you?
I'm doing very well. The whole notion of a cherry festival feels really far away to me right now because it's -6 degrees outside my window here. The whole country is being swept away in this cold front that's moving through the whole country. But the cherry festival is something that happens, I imagine, in sunny, beautiful weather in Michigan, where everyone celebrates cherries. What is this cherry festival?
Well, I mean, surprisingly, we're like 150-ish days away from the National Cherry Festival, which is the first week of July. So June 28th to July 5th is the Cherry Festival this year, reigning in 99 years of celebrating our favorite fruit here. So yes, you heard me correctly. 99 years of celebrating the National Cherry Festival and all things cherry, coming up on our 100th anniversary in 2026. So we love cherries here in Northern Michigan. We are self-proclaimed the cherry capital of the world.
So this is, I always love this because, getting to cover these teams and alternate identities and things that they do with, especially when it comes to agriculture like this, right? Like the number of places that are the blueberry capital of the world, right? Like, just for instance, the National Cherry Festival, the word national is important there, right? Because you are staking a claim. So you say self-proclaimed. I want to hear it. What is Michigan's claim to being the cherry capital of the world?
Well, Traverse City has the
Okay.
claim of being the cherry capital of the world specifically.
All right.
We grow 70% of the nation's tart cherries right here in our region, and around a 5-county region. So we grow the Mount Morency, the most famous of the tart cherries, that is put into making dried cherries, making cherry juice, cherry concentrate. But here in Traverse City alone, you will find it in everything from ice cream to jerky to cheese to on your salads, to made into vinaigrettes, to savory barbecue sauce on your pulled pork at a local restaurant. We love cherries and we're obsessed with them up here. So not only do we grow them all, but we put them in all of our food, and then you find them on everything you own. So we are very big into all of our red, cherry pins, cherry decor. You can see it behind me on my walls. I mean, it's very much what we do here is cherries, celebrating our favorite fruit, and of course our growers and processors, which helped found the festival in 1926. So we started in logging in Traverse City, moved into agriculture, and here we are today still celebrating our favorite fruit.
The festival itself, 99 years, that's pretty incredible. You've mentioned a lot of food items,
Yes.
and I want to, and you had me at ice cream. I have to admit, you had me at ice cream. It's my favorite thing in the whole world.
Yeah.
Just recently, I don't think last night, but maybe within the last few nights, I was eating a cherry chocolate chunk ice cream, and it was delicious, and it's gone now. What are some of the surprising things that people put cherries in? Like, if I live in Colorado, I grew up on the East Coast. I like cherries just fine, but I don't, they're not part of my culture necessarily. What are some of the surprising things people are doing with cherries in food?
Well, let me talk about ice cream and then I'll talk about the
Mm,
surprising things. So we do
okay.
something a little different with ice cream. We do something called a cherry pie flurry. We take an entire slice of Grand Trevor's cherry crumb pie, put it in a cup with vanilla ice cream, and then put it in a flurry machine and make a cherry pie flurry. The only play I see your face right now. You're like, that sounds amazing.
It does
The,
sound, it's 7:30 in the morning in Colorado, and right now I'm just thinking, how do I get my hands on one of these
yes.
cherry ice cream things?
So the Cherry Pie Flurry is an exclusive event of the National Cherry Festival. It's an exclusive item. You can only get it during the 8 days in Open Space Park at the National Cherry Festival. Cherry Pie Flurry is where it's at. The other thing we do with ice cream, because there's more.
Uh-huh.
It's one of those, wait, there's more.
This is just
Uh,
going to be an ice cream podcast now.
it might be. Our friends here at Moomers, we have America's favorite scoop here, Moomers Ice Cream, an iconic ice cream shop that is actually on a farm. So you can walk outside, eat your ice cream, and look at the cows. Yes,
Awesome. That's
big in
amazing.
agriculture here.
Yeah.
They make our famous ice cream that is our signature ice cream of the National Cherry Festival, which is called Cherry Traffic Jam. We like to make fun of ourselves that we cause a lot of traffic issues with our festival.
Uh-huh.
It is a vanilla-based ice cream with a graham cracker crunch and a cherry swirl that is from our local cherries.
Wow.
So both are fantastic. So when we talk ice cream, we love sweets, we love pie, but the savory side of cherries, I think, is the most unique.
Yeah.
So I've seen it made into vinegar, barbecue sauces, marinades, but the most unique is put into burgers and
Wow.
bratwursts and
Okay.
meat and jerky because of its health components. So cherries, in and amongst themselves, are full of antioxidants. They're very healthy. They have melatonin. They help you sleep, and they help with recovery from runs and inflammation. So people are putting dried cherries into their burger meat and then making burger patties. And that has become a really big trend with dried cherries being put into those, and then also into brats. You'll see a lot of that. And then also into jerky. We have the local jerky company who will make a cherry-based jerky. So you're seeing put more in meat, which I think is a different play for
Yeah.
fruit.
Yeah, that's fascinating and I kind of want to try it. And it's sort of
Yeah.
consistent with this trend of like mixing sweet and savory, right? Like
Yeah.
it's, because the whole salted caramel chocolate thing, right? Like it's the
Absolutely. And I don't think the cherries don't have a very strong taste
mm,
when they're put into burger. So really, you're just trying to have the health benefits of cherry. There's not a ton of it. I mean, in a bratwurst, yes, you'll taste it a bit more, but in the
yeah.
burger, I haven't found as much of it because it's more ground up.
Yeah.
So you're really grounding it right into the burger meat and you're making those. We have some relationships here with a local processor, Leelanau Fruit, who worked with Wahlburger and
Yeah.
made like burger patties that were then sold in stores. And so everything that we look for in our local economy here is how do we get cherries out into the rest of the world and find those unique ways to use them beyond a topping on your dessert and beyond a pie.
You and Jacqueline both made that sort of qualification of Traverse City being the tart cherry capital of the
Yeah.
world. And it raises two questions for me, which are what's the opposite of a tart cherry? Like what's a cherry that is not a tart
Sure.
cherry? And is there a capital of the world for that other kind of cherry?
Okay. That's a good question. So sweet cherries would be the
Okay.
opposite. So sweet would be the ones you would traditionally like pick off a tree in an orchard and just eat.
I see. Okay.
Tart, you can, they're just
Uh-huh.
what they sound, tart. So, you're eating them and you're like, "Ooh, that's puckery."
Yeah.
Um, yes, and so those are the difference, the sweets and the tarts. We grow a ton of sweets here, just
Okay.
not as many as the tart. Most of the sweets would probably be grown in Utah, is more of a sweet cherry market, and it has to do with climate and where the best growing season is for the different kinds of cherries. We do grow a ton of sweets here. The growing season just isn't as long, and we just don't have as many trees here. So
Okay.
tart is where it's at for us, but sweets are still definitely a part of everything we celebrate. So your sweets would be the ones you'd find in a cup or off a tree that you would just eat as you're walking, whereas the tarts are used more for your baking, your juice, putting in foods, and cooking would be more your tart usage.
You are wearing a shirt right now that has a pattern on it, which is little pairs of cherries still on their stems. The iconic way to sort of portray cherries is as pears. It happens it's in this logo and it's on your shirt, the pattern on your shirt there. Why is that? Is that how they grow, or is that just become sort of the way that we like to portray them?
It's a good question. I
Very
am
good.
not a cherry grower myself, so I'm sitting here thinking about them on the tree right now, going, I don't know. And I'm looking for the picture of the cherries in my office that are from an orchard that I'm like, is that kind of, we do put them in pairs a lot. Now that you say that, I'm like, we do, our logo is three cherries. Pit Spitters is two. We
Okay.
tend to put things in groupings so
Yeah.
that I don't know necessarily if they grow particularly that way. They look on the trees like they're in clumps. And I
Yeah.
think and when the shakers come by and shake them, they all shake down. And so some have stems, some don't. It depends on how they are, either handpicked or shaken from the tree. So
Okay.
that's a really good question. I'm going to have to dive a little deeper
I
next
suppose
time
I
I'm
could
in an
just
orchard.
Google it.
No, I'm going to go out to the orchard and say, well, Paul asked me a great question of
It's
now I'm going to have
certain.
to go ask the growers and processors because now you've
Yeah.
me.
Well, it's certainly how you see them portrayed all the
Mhm.
time. Speaking of how they are portrayed, this team is portraying them actually spitting pits. Is Does the festival do anything with that? Is there like a pit spitting competition or anything like that? Is that
So, yes,
déclassé?
yes.
No.
Yes, we have a pit spitting contest. It is something that we've had for many, many years. The record is on our website, and I'm not entirely sure, but I think it's like 78 feet.
Come
It is
on.
very long. Our pit spit mat is over 100 feet long, our official pit spit mat.
Yeah.
We have the iconic event at the National Cherry Festival three times during the week. In the evening,
Okay.
you can come down and get your chance to spit your pit
Yeah.
as far as it can go.
The
There's prizes. It's a big thing. Yeah.
what's the prize for spitting a cherry pit 70 feet?
I mean, a trophy and
Oh,
bragging rights for the
wow.
next year. It's
And
a big deal.
whose job is it to clean the pit spitting mat?
So we have sweepers, they have
Okay.
brooms,
All right.
and they
All right.
sweep the pits up after every spit. You get two tries. You get two cherries. So you get to eat your cherry. So you have to have
Yeah.
a fresh pit. And so people are standing there, rolling a cherry around in their mouth, getting that pit ready, and then they spit them down a mat. Yeah. Our
The
national cherry queen and her court also spit pits along against our president and some other people of our board members.
I am absolutely seeing now why this team is called what it's called. I absolutely expected you to be like, nah, that's just a thing people do at picnics or
Oh,
whatever, but it's no,
no.
it's part of the culture.
We actually stopped it between 2020 and
Oh, sure.
2022.
Yeah.
Dude, yes, that this was the very last event to come back after the pandemic because of its literal nature of what it did. Yeah.
It makes a
Yes.
lot of sense to hear you say that. Yes.
Yes. We have a pit spit of pie eating. If it is an iconic sort of Mayberry nostalgic sort of event,
Yeah.
I guarantee we have it.
Well, I was going to ask that question actually. So what are the other sort of iconic events that you have at the festival, cherry related?
So there is a lot. We have 150 events over eight
Wow.
days. We have a large air show the opening weekend, sometimes featuring the U.S. Navy Blue Angels, sometimes featuring the Air Force Thunderbirds. Other times it is civilian and other acts. This year we have an F-35 tech demo and an F-22 tech demo. So amazing air show opening weekend. We have 8 nights of concerts
Hmm.
this year featuring Weird Al Yankovic.
Come
Uh,
on, you guys are going to have Weird Al?
yeah, Weird Al with Puddles the Pity Party will be there to open for him. We have Tyler Hubbard opening weekend and T.I. right now that are announced. Those are three of our 8 nights. Our Bayside Music Stage right on the water has a concert every night. We have all of your iconic, the Pit Spit, the Pie Eating, the kids events, two great parades, each one with about 120 units with marching bands and the whole 9 yards that are televised. We have kids events, bubblegum blowing contests, down to a pet show, over to the Ultimate Air Dogs, which have dogs that jump in a pool and see how far they can jump. So you name it, we have it. 90% is free to the public. And then we have our farm markets, food court, souvenir tent, all the things that you can find, like our, wonderful cherry gear, down to all of those sweet and savory items that I mentioned, from chocolate covered cherries all the way to cherry jerky you can find in our cherry farm market. We have cherry margaritas and cherry beer for those who
Oh, of course.
want to have a more adult beverage in our beer tent on the water.
Yeah.
And then, our Cherry Kids Club is open all week, as I said, pet show, bubblegum blow, cherry crafts, hi ho cheerio, fun and games, and all the things that you can imagine to enjoy at the festival.
The National Cherry Festival sounds actually pretty amazing. You had me at Weird Al. So you have ice cream and Weird Al at the same
We
event.
do.
I'm actually going to see Weird Al Yankovic at Red Rocks here in Colorado. So
Oh,
like the
amazing.
iconic Red Rock
Yeah,
Amphitheater in Denver, or just outside of Denver. Weird Al's going to be there. So I'm a
I love
Weird Al
that.
fan. One last question for you, Kat, and then I'll let you get on with planning the Cherry Festival only 150 days away at the time of this recording. Is there a relationship between the festival and the team? Do you guys do anything with them? What is that like?
We absolutely love them. So we do a couple events actually out at the Turtle Creek Stadium, home of the Pit Spitters. We have our kickoff party for all, oh, what do we have now? Almost 2,800 volunteers.
Wow.
They all get to go out to the ballpark, and we have our kickoff party out there on a night they don't have a game. They're gracious enough to invite us all in and have stadium food and live that fun. And then we also do a takeover where we bring all our volunteers out to a game and do that later in July. And it's a great way to thank our volunteers and have them cheer on our hometown team. And of course, who doesn't love Monty? So if you didn't get to talk to or experience the fun of Monty, their mascot,
Hmm.
he is quite the guy. He comes in our parades and comes down to the festival and gets to experience some of that stuff too. They're an incredible team, and we are lucky to have them in our hometown representing this stuff. And you asked a little bit earlier about the logo and
Oh yeah.
kind of the team name. That actually was a community-wide vote. So the community got to have a hand in and
Yeah.
get their word out about what they felt the next team name would be. And we were ecstatic. We actually got to be some of the first people to know when it was chosen. They called and said, heads up, Pit Spitters was chosen, and we're going to have these cherries that are going to spit pits as our logo. And I was like, I mean, it's wild and crazy, and I love it because you're celebrating cherries. However you can do it, you were celebrating cherries. So we loved it.
Well, I can tell you there are certain logos out there in baseball that sort of catch the public imagination, and this is one that whether you've ever been to Northern Michigan or not, people enjoy this logo and people enjoy this brand. Knowing what I know now about this festival and all the things cherry about Northern Michigan, I've said this a bajillion times on this podcast. One of my favorite things about minor league baseball is learning about all of these corners of the country where these cool, fun things are happening. The National Cherry Festival is definitely one of them. Kat, where can people find the festival online, and when can they go do all of these fun things in Michigan?
Absolutely. The festival is June 28th to July 5th this year coming up. And then cherryfestival.org to plan all of your adventures. Schedule is up, so start planning those fun days. Come on up to Northern Michigan. There's actually an amazing event too that we didn't talk about entirely, where you get to go to a working cherry farm and see how it goes and have a tractor ride and like experience all that the cherry capital has to offer. So cherryfestival.org to plan your adventure, and then traverse city.com to go ahead and book your rooms because those are going fast.
I bet they are. And then are you on social media?
Absolutely. Facebook and Instagram.
Kat, thank you so much. This is honestly, I expected it to be fun, but it was actually way more fun than I thought it was going to be. So,
Oh, good. Because we talked
so
about ice cream first. I get it.
we did, and then we talked about Weird Al, and then we talked about pit spinning. So, like, all of these things are so much fun. Thank you so much. I know you've got a
Absolutely.
lot of work ahead of you the next few months here, so good luck with the planning, and hope to see you at the Cherry Festival sometime. It wasn't necessarily on my radar, but it sure is now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Welcome back, everybody. It's time once again for Studio Simon Stumpers, in which designer Dan Simon, responsible for so many great logos in the minor league baseball landscape, brings a trivia question every single week, and we call them Studio Simon Stumpers. Dan, good morning. Hello, how are you?
Good morning to you, Paul. I am fantastic. Thank you. You preface every one of my segments, stumper segments here on the Baseball by Design podcast with something about me being a prolific, amazing logo designer, doing all of this kind of stuff. But I think at this point, my fame is more on the stumper side, wouldn't you say?
I think your creator, crafter, weekly narrator of Studio Simon Stumpers first, and then designer of amazing logos like the Daytona Tortugas, the Danville Dairy Daddies, the oh no, wait, I don't want to say that one. The Rome Emperors, the Columbus Clingstones. So many minor league baseball logos out there. Too many to name. I just turned and glanced at my hat wall just to see, like, because it's riddled with Dan Simon logos behind me here. So
the one you were saying and stopped yourself from saying, I'm assuming was what's you're wearing on your head right now, which is Lake County Captains, which I did do, but has been recently undone by a brand. It's really not a brand update. It's a whatever kind of going back in time is because what would that be? A brand?
What would you call that? Like a brand reprisal, maybe? A brand like it's not a faux back because it's reimagining one of their original logos. I don't know what you would call that, Dan. I don't have a good word for it.
Well, the Lake County Captains have done their updated identity that is features their original captain character sort of pretty close to the way he originally looked. There's
Right.
some differences about him, but they went back to that. So, but that's why listeners, uh, Paul was not going to mention it, but I mentioned it for him since he's wearing the cap.
I am wearing the cap right now, the yellow cap with the blue brim and your captain character on it. Yeah, I don't know, I was naming logos that are current. The minor league baseball logo landscape is shifting and changing all the time, as you know. And so this Lake County Captains cap that I'm wearing was their current brand. And you're right, I was going to gloss over it so as to not call attention to the fact that it was replaced. But you know as well as anyone that the minor league baseball landscape changes all the time, like as with this Traverse City Pit Spitters brand. They were the Traverse City Beach Bums. We talked about that a little bit already on this episode. They had an adorable little bear character, kind of reminiscent of the like the Asheville Tourists original hiking bear, the bear with the stick with the bandana on the end of it. That Beach Bums bear sort of reminds me of that a little bit. So anyhow, Dan, we could go on and on about the logos you've created, the logos that have changed over the years. Let's see where you're going to go with the Traverse City Pit Spitters. Is it going to be how many collegiate summer level teams are named for fruit?
Uh, no, because I view this brand identity as being less about fruit and more about the habit of spitting.
Spitting. Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so we're
you've
going
got
to
several
talk.
things. You've got cherries that are spitting out baseballs. You've got a tree that's spitting out a baseball. It's a juicy logo.
Yeah, it's just all spitting.
And their
So
mascots we said are named Spit and Wad.
really,
Something like that.
wow. Anyway, the spitting is something that's certainly not an uncommon activity in baseball. Lots of spitting going on, but baseball players are not the only beings known to spit. So, our studio Simon Stumper today asks, which of these minor league baseball teams has a Copa de la Diversión identity featuring a character known to spit? Okay, is it the Beloit Skycarp, the Eugene Emeralds, or the Hickory Crawdads? Which one has a Copa identity featuring a character known to spit?
Dan, this is a great question. This is a really fun question. And I was thinking when I was little, I had a book. I had a series of books when I was a kid that were like, so and so does the most amazing things. And one of them was fish do the most amazing things. And I remember I was really taken with this one particular fish that would spit water to knock bugs off of leaves, and then the bugs would fall into the water, and then the fish would go eat them. And I was racking my brain to think which Copa identity was based on this fish that could spit bugs off of leaves. And then I remembered, of course, as you started naming the teams, that who else spits besides this amazing fish but a llama? And the llama is the Hickory Crawdads Copa brand.
Nicely done. See, wouldn't you say you're correct, sir? Wouldn't you say that look, your host, listeners, has a big smile on his face. He loves to get these stumpers correct. Wouldn't you say that what would you say is the first animal that comes to mind for you when it comes to spitting?
Well, aside from I mean the fish, like honestly that fish that I was talking about jumped straight to mind. Like that was the first thing I thought of was this. I can still picture the illustration from that book all those years ago. But then I thought of the there's those little dinosaurs that took out Newman in
Ah,
Jurassic Park, and I thought of them as well because they're just little guys, but then they spit, and it was, I guess, I don't know, acidic or something, and it took
the
down Newman the Newman the Seinfeld postman.
wow, you're having trouble getting the words out
I
today.
guess.
Okay, so the first animal I think of is or camels. So
Ah,
do you know they're known to spit, but
oh, for
yes,
sure. Yeah,
llamas are as well. Now,
yeah.
just for your listeners, the Beloit skycarp, they are the paletas, which is a Latin popsicle. The Eugene emeralds are the monarchus, monarch butterfly, and the hickory crawdads are the llamas de hickory. Now, I wonder, and I don't know this because Spanish was not the language I took in high school, and you are a were a French minor in college. Is it pronounced llamas in Spanish?
It is. Yeah, the double L becomes a Y sound.
Okay. So that's the correct answer. Do you know why llamas spit?
Oh, their mouths are dry because the chewing tobacco in the dugout.
That's one of the reasons. Llamas spit for a number of reasons. I wonder if Ranger Amy would know the reasons. Check these out.
Yeah,
They
okay.
spit when they're agitated or they feel threatened, to warn other llamas or people to stay away, to settle arguments. What kind of argument can a llama have? Maybe, hey, stop spitting at me. Um, to repel amorous advances,
Whoa,
to
that works,
correct
by the way.
young llamas.
Huh?
You know what? There were actually so many, and I can go on, but I think it's pretty clear that llamas will spit for just about any reason.
Yeah, it sounds like it might be sort of danger of mixed signals there. Like it's there's so many reasons for a llama to split to split. There's so many reasons for a llama to spit that how do you know which one they're trying to convey to you?
It sounds like it's just easy to get on the wrong side of a llama. So,
I know exactly which side that is too. So, Dan, this was again why I don't try to research in advance because there's never any way to tell which way you were going to go with these Studio Simon stumpers. If we haven't said it already on this episode, you are on Instagram and exclusively Instagram when it comes to social media. Your handle there is at studio_Simon. I noticed that you've been posting recently, so hey, go check Dan out on Instagram. And Dan, thank you. This was a fun one. We'll see you again next week.
okay, yeah, I liked bringing a smile to your face by asking you a stumper that you knew the answer to without hesitation.
You
So,
you said that I was smiling because I knew the answer. I've gotten them right before, and it doesn't always charm me quite the same way this one did. I think this time I was smiling, yes, because I knew the answer, and that that is pleasing to know the answer. But I think the direction that you went with it was just so charming. The idea of a baseball logo related to spitting, and you found one. So I think the smile on my face was as much about the question as it was about the fact that I got it right. So it's I enjoyed that very much. So hopefully there are more smiles to come down the road with more stumpers. We will see you next week, Dan.
looking forward to it. Thank you, Paul. See ya.